Great. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeff Bay. I'm the managing director here at the Brandery, and thanks for joining us for today's webinar. This is our final webinar for the Ohio ERP program, and today we'll be covering some mental health and wellness resources for small business owners, as well as your employees. Just a couple quick announcements before we get things kicked off. Uh, if you're able to, or if you're not able to access the call via Wi-Fi and you're having trouble hearing the audio, here's some dial-in information. You can call in from your phone using the number below, as well as the webinar ID. For questions today, we'll be taking them through the Q&A chat box in the Zoom functionality. So feel free to type in the questions there, send them over. We'll reserve the last 20 minutes of the webinar today for any questions. And any unanswered questions, we'll be sure to connect with the speaker, get those answered to you. So make sure to not submit those anonymously. And if you're having any trouble asking the questions through the chat box specifically, feel free to email myself, jeff@brandery.org, as well as jess@brandery.org during the presentation. And due to the number of people on the call today, we'll be unable to solve any technology issues. But just as a reminder, similar to previous webinars this week, we'll be recording all of them and hosting them on our website starting at the end of today. Last announcement would be, if you haven't had a chance to connect with our team, just a reminder, we're doing free one-on-one consultations with you and any small business here in Ohio to see how we can be helpful, walking you through some of the eligible loan programs, as well as any other issues that you're faced with your business. But today we're honored to have Dr. Roshawnna Novellus, founder and CEO of EnrichHER, here with us. She's going to walk us through again some resources for both you and your employees. So Roshawnna, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and give you control.
Okay, hello everyone. Hello everyone. I am going to talk about how you can find your internal anchor during the midst of everything that is happening. I believe that once you find your anchor, your life becomes easier in terms of making any critical decisions for yourself, your family, and your team. And so I'm going to walk through a couple techniques that'll help you get there. But before that, I wanted to give you a little bit of background about myself so you know about my story and how I ended up with this perspective. So I'm originally from San Diego, California. Both my parents were teachers, and I always really loved school. And starting in the third grade was my first time dealing with a bit of adversity when my teacher pulled me out of class and told me, Rashawn, you're not going to be good at math. You just don't have that capacity. And I didn't understand why. I didn't understand why anybody would think that about me. I didn't understand what her perspective was, but I loved math and I loved school. So I decided then and there that I would be in the top math multiplication group, and I would do the 12 years old. My mother told me that all women need to be in charge of their economic power. And so she started taking me with her to the investment club meetings at her school with the other fellow teachers. And I began to be able to price investments and become really comfortable with money. And then by the age of 15 is when I created a whole strategy to pay for my college education. I wrote 200 letters to organizations across the US and ended up raising over $600,000 that paid for my entire college education, including my PhD in computer engineering and finance. But throughout this time, I was also into physical fitness. So I was a cheerleader, and I was a professional dancer by junior high school. I did cheer in high school and college. I was a cheerleader in college. And so even though I was super type A, super into achievements and awards, I always had this balance of like the fitness to make me feel like anchored and make me feel grounded. And so eventually when I finished my PhD, I was in Washington, D.C., and I really started focusing on my yoga practice more religiously. So I've been a person who's attended yoga classes for over 20 years now. And so it's always been a part of my journey and a part of, my intake. But it wasn't until I turned 35 and I thought about myself and my constant ambition, and I said, I'm one of these I'll be happy when people. I'll be happy when life is different. I'll be happy when I have more money. I'll be happy when I win the next award. I'll be happy when I'm in this next magazine, right? We have all these goals, sometimes monetarily, sometimes with our family, sometimes with our business. And a lot of us use those goals as the carrot of success versus what we have accomplished thus far and where we are today. So when I turned 35, I decided, hey, I'm going to leave the US for a while. I'm going to move to Thailand and study yoga at an ashram. So I set off to do this several years ago, flew across the world to find this little ashram in the mountains in Thailand. At the ashram, we had no hot water. We only could eat food off of the land that was grown there. You had to be a strict vegan for at least a couple of months before you arrived. There was no coffee. There was no dryer, so you had to wash your clothes and hang them outside. And it was a bit of a shock to my system. But while I was there, I realized that a lot of times our unhappiness or our stress or our uneasiness is because we're either comparing ourselves to other people, we're caught up in this I'll be happy when moment. And what we really, in fact, need to do is focus on what we can control, finding our own anchor, and being in that place before we make any strategic decisions for our lives and for our futures. So I came back to the US after this experience, started this company, EnrichHER. EnrichHER is a platform that helps women-led businesses with financing and resources. And we've helped over 23,000 people to date. But just wanted to give you a background on that before I jump into the techniques. So I'm going to go through 5 today. And the first is breathing intentionally. So a lot of times we take advantage of our breath because, we have to breathe just to be alive. So we kind of take it for granted. And a lot of times we don't realize that changing how we breathe affects our heart and affects how we feel about ourselves. So an easy way to calm anxiety and calm stress is to practice breathing where the exhales are longer than the inhales. Sounds simple, right? Just breathe where your exhale is longer than our inhale. So if we breathe in to 2 counts, breathe out to 4. So I'm just demonstrating. So I'm breathing in. And I know I can't see all of you, but if you could all try this with me, I'm going to cue you. So we're going to breathe, and I'm going to cue you to breathe in for 3 and out 6. I have shorter breaths because I have asthma, so I can't hold my breath that long. But most people can hold their breath for a longer period of time. So I'm just going to cue you. So exhale all the air out, and then we're going to breathe in. 1, 2, 3. Sustain, and then breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that was just one example, one breath, but it's really good to do that for as long as you need so that you're able to relax, right? So whenever I'm feeling anxious and I need to rush, I try to focus on breathing. This could be before I have a radically candid conversation with one of my teammates. A lot of us have had to like furlough our employees or make tough decisions with our vendors or our staff. And a lot of times we're on edge as leaders about this. And just simply trying to breathe in and breathe out and take longer breaths can calm you down very quickly. So I definitely recommend just taking that practice, and that's something you could do wherever you go. One thing I really love about yoga is the whole premise of the movement as we follow in the Western world with movements in yoga is to teach you how to breathe. Like you can only stand in this pose, the tree pose, if you're breathing calmly. So a lot of times if you go into these balancing postures or you do things that put you into uncomfortable positions, it forces you to think about your breath, and you can control your breath in the way that I mentioned. And you could do the opposite if you want to like warm your body up. But if you want to calm down, just focus on exhaling longer than inhaling. So the next technique that I want to talk about is doing easy affirmations. And easy affirmations require you to think about how would you describe an easy life? So for instance, my life is easy when all invoices are paid on time. My life is easiest when all of my employees are happy. My life is easiest when strategy just comes to me without stress. My life is easiest when everyone's on the same page. My life is easiest when everyone understands the pivot and messaging and everyone gets it clearly. My life is easiest when I have my support system in place. My life is easiest when I don't have to stress out to get stuff done. My life is easiest when I don't have to work around the clock. My life is easiest when I get enough sleep. My life is easiest when I get enough healthy food in my body. My life is easiest when I get enough of a workout and live a healthy life. And so what when you do these easy affirmations, what happens is you calm yourself down because you're actually visualizing what your ideal life is like, and you're saying what you need, right? And saying what you need and what you're looking for helps reset who you are, what you balance, and then after that, it's always easier to create a plan, to create an outreach strategy once you feel calm and collected. So you can do these easy affirmations about anything. They could be about your company in itself. It could be about your personal relationships. It could be about how you're dealing with others. It could be about any financial decisions. But it's always good to set the stage of what you want first before you enter into any type of strategic decision making. I'm going to stop sharing real quick to see if there are any questions yet. So I don't see any questions, but feel free to jump in. I usually like to have these interactive. So if anyone wanted to, participate and share like your easy affirmations, I would love that. If you raise your hand, then maybe we could allow you to share. So, but in the midst of that, I am going to continue. So the third technique is to speak to your younger self. So I added a picture of me, I believe at the age of 5 or 6. My brother's 4 years younger than I. So we were here in San Diego when we were younger. And I see someone join. I'll get to you. Let me see. Let's see what the question is.
Yeah, Russ.
Yeah. What is a good way to share these techniques with a team? So you as a team can do this individually or together. So we at my company, we have Wednesday at 1 o'clock as a team where we go around and say, what fear did we let go this week? Or what thing that we learned, or what did you realize in your journal that was holding you back, right? So we share that as a team and we're all very close, but I know some people that's not how they feel with their team and they don't want to share everything with them. So an alternative is just to like demonstrate and let people know these are some possible strategies that they could use, and then give them some examples and encourage them to do them on their own. So those are the two ways I would share with my team. Okay. I have a lot on my computer. So this is a picture of my brother and I when we were younger. And when I say speak to your younger self, it's like visualize yourself as a child. And how would you treat yourself? Would you tell yourself that you were taking too long, or would you tell yourself that you weren't good enough? Would you tell yourself that you're not handling stress correctly? No, most of us, When we think of children, when we think of ourselves as the children, we are immediately filled with grace. We're immediately filled with compassion. You know, if someone has a meltdown, another child, we are like, oh, maybe they're just tired or hungry, versus pointing fingers and calling people names and jumping off the deep end, right? So sometimes just imagining yourself as a child allows you to have that compassionate, that self-compassionate compassion with yourself. Earlier this week, I was speaking to a business owner, and she unfortunately experienced a death in her family due to COVID-19. And she called me because she didn't know what to do. Her business, is based on, she has a consultancy. So it's based on, her exchanging time for dollars. And she said, I don't know if I can just have the capacity to mourn this death in my family, or if I should be trying to get as many financial resources as possible right now because of the uncertainty. And I spoke to her and I said, well, hey, first of all, you're allowed to have time to mourn. I mean, that's just a natural human expression. A lot of times as business owners, we feel like we don't have that grace or capacity. But secondly, what would you tell like your younger self? What would, if you were 5 or 6 or 7, would you let yourself feel something before moving on? Would you let yourself deal with what is happening? Like, we don't have to continue to run and continue to make the strategic decisions at all times. And sometimes, in order for us to be reminded of this, we just need to remember we were once a kid, right? We learned all these things, but that inner child is still within us, right? So, sometimes when I wake up in the morning, I don't want to rush. Like, I love doing affirmations when I wake up, and I'm a morning person. So super morning Roshawnna wakes up at 5 a.m. and not so super morning Roshawnna wakes up at 8. So both of those are morning times, but there's a range, right? And, if you're a child and needing an extra nap, you wouldn't get upset with yourself, right? So I definitely encourage people to try this practice. And the beginner is to do it with yourself. And some people, have a challenge doing it with themselves. And sometimes it's easier for people to do it with their family. So if you think about your parents, and it depends on your situation, but it might be easier to do it with your parents. Maybe they're being, like I had to tell my mom she can't go to the stores anymore because she's curious. She loves window shopping. And I'd sometimes think about like her as a little kid, like, okay, mother, I understand that you love going window shopping, want to see what's going on, but it's time for you to just stay indoors, right? So sometimes if you think about anyone you interact with as a child, not in a derogatory way, but to open up that compassion towards them, it's easy to communicate and it's easier to get your intended result if you think about how all of us were children at one point in time. So that's that strategy. Um, One of my, the fourth technique that I want to share with you is feet gratitude. So I had a leadership coach a few years ago, and whenever I was worried about, my company and raising funds, she said, "Did you do your feet gratitude practice?" And I was like, "I didn't." So, what feet gratitude practice entails is just thinking about all of the things that your feet enable you to do. So, thank you, feet, for allowing me to take a shower standing up. Thank you, feet, for allowing me to walk to my mailbox. Thank you, feet, for allowing me to do my crazy yoga poses on the stairs. Thank you, feet, for allowing me to take walks, allowing me to exercise. Thank you, feet, for if I'm thirsty in the middle of the night, allowing me to get up to get water. And the point of the exercise really isn't about your feet specifically. It could be anything, your hands, your ears, anything on your body. But the point of it is to recenter your anchor and to be being grateful for something that you might take for granted. So the exercise requires you to, at minimum, say 20 things about your feet that you're grateful for. So I just listed several examples, and it could be anything. Thank you for allowing me to leave a room when I'm stressed out. Thank you for allowing me to have an office space that I can walk from my car, walk down the street to get to. Thank you for allowing me to go when the airports are okay through the airport system. Thank you for allowing me to buy my own produce. Thank you, feet. And so I really love this technique, and I put like a little dog here because that's kind of funny, but it really makes it a lot easier for you to get out of your head and get back into your physical space so that you can, move forward. Any questions? I don't see any down there. And I'm going to just share one last strategy here. So, the last strategy that I recommend is journaling. So, there are many different ways to journal, but here are some of the things that can help. So, of course, always including gratitude. So, grateful that you woke up today, grateful that you have food or shelter or whatever you're grateful for. Some people like me love putting goals in there for the day. So, I subscribe to the philosophy that you should only have a maximum of 3 to 5 goals every day, one of which should be for self care. So, what are those goals of the day? And having a concrete, specific number of goals helps you from not getting pulled in too many directions. So, one of my goals for today was to deliver this talk to all of you. So, that's one of them. I only have 3 today, so that's what I needed. But it's really good to have these goals, and maybe it's to apply for one of these loan programs. Maybe it's to submit all your employees for the unemployment if that's what's going on in your state. So, whatever your top goals are, it's really good to just know what they are before other people kind of pull you into different directions. And it's good to do a recap as well. So, a lot of people journal and they journal after the fact. So, these are all the things that happened today. This is how I felt. So, if you want to recap, that's also a great component. What would make today great? So, if you journal in the morning, you can write some things that would make today great. So, certain examples include, hey, today will be great if, I got through all my emails. Today would be great if I was happy all day. Today would be great if I didn't let any news that I read make me anxious. Today would be great if um, I was able to work out for 30 minutes or take a walk for 30 minutes. So it's really up to you in terms of writing whatever would make today great. Today would be great if I spent time with my children or my family. So if you start with saying today is going to be great and put in things that you can control, it helps you keep that top of mind as you proceed through the day. If you journal in the evening, you can add these 2 additional components to your journal. What are the amazing things that happened today? Oh, today someone unexpectedly gave me a compliment. One of my customers emailed me and said, "Thank you. I know it's hard, but I really appreciate what you're doing." My family, my son, my daughter did this XYZ and it made me really happy. So it's basically like a reflection to remind you of everything that happened that was wonderful, because a lot of times it's easy for us to put all that wonderful stuff on the shelf and focus on all the scary negative stuff. But it's really important for you to have a space to say, what are the amazing things that did happen, right? And usually every single day, no matter the range, you can find something that was great. It was great that, I was able to have grocery delivery, or that the weather was nice, or whatever it is, just to ensure that we're not staying in this place of like friction or anxiety. And then the last component that is good for people to consider is, how could I have made the day better? So none of us are perfect. Most of us get stressed or anxious or feel ways about uncertainty. But thinking about how could I have made this day better is like a step in decreasing that friction. So one of the things with me is I like direct communication. And a lot of people don't like direct communication. They want to be asked about their weekend or their family or something that's not about the task at hand before they go into the task at hand, right? And so throughout my life, I've had to learn that you have to communicate with people in the way that they prefer. But sometimes I resist. So when I look back on how could I have made the day better, I was like, I could have reduced some of the tension between some of my employees when I had conversation with them if I would have simply just asked them these 2 or 3 questions. How long would it have taken, right? So just because I don't like all these questions doesn't mean that it's not worth asking someone else just to make my day better. If they're happier because they tell me about what happened to their child or what they did this weekend, and then they have a positive outlook that they share with me, then that's one of the things I could have done to make my own day better. And that's just an example that relates to communication with someone else, but it could be things with yourself. So I'm one of these people that wakes up and takes vitamins every single morning. And I realize some days when I don't do it, that I'm more lethargic and less energetic. So one of the things, I could have taken my vitamins when I woke up in the morning. I could have not eaten pizza, or I could have just accepted myself as it happened and been flexible and not really cared about the result, right? So it's not always like a matter of you always need to change or be better, but sometimes you just needed to accept that you were not in control. That could have made your day better, right? So these are just some topics to consider based on your journaling strategy. But typically, employing these strategies enables you to find your own anchor, have a good reference, find your own calmness, and it's not based on anybody else. And then I recommend, once you find your calmness, then you can jump into making whatever strategic business decisions, financial decisions, your radical candor with your stakeholders, if that's what you're doing. And the conversations tend to go more smoothly because you're in this place of compassion, you're in this place of grounding, which always makes, well, typically, not always, nothing is absolute, which generally makes people feel more calm in all kinds of communications. And it helps you feel more calm so that you can clearly make decisions that are best for you and your business. So let me see. So if you want to ask me any questions, here's my email address. It's Roshawnna at EnrichHER.com, ROSHAWNNA, and I'll drop it in the chat. And then I would love to just open it up to any questions about anything I discussed.
Yeah, we've got a few questions coming in. So I'm just going to ask them. Okay. What are some virtual tools you've used to increase mindfulness, or tools that you recommend?
So I'm like old school with, it's not even really old school. I just use YouTube videos. So I created a playlist of talks that I want to listen to like first thing in the morning. I have a different playlist for either sounds or music I want to listen to during the day. And then I have a different one for like my gratitude, letting go affirmations before I go to sleep. So there's tons of different, talks or meditation or calming music and rain sounds all on YouTube. So I use that. But there are also, of course, tons of apps like the Calm app for at night. There's an insight timer. There's Dharma Seeds, which has a lot of different talks. But I keep defaulting just to YouTube because there's so many people who have great videos there. Other kinds of tools, there are lots of tools that limit the number of notifications that you receive on your computer. So there's so many of them, so I'm not going to pick a specific one, but sometimes that's all you need is just to turn off notifications on your phone or on your computer. So turn off the social media and the email and just kind of focus. And so those are the techniques that I would use.
This next question kind of builds on top of that. What are your tips for limiting seeing all of this really anxiety-inducing content, whether it be on social media or the news?
Yeah, I would definitely just time block it. So if you say, hey, And luckily, most of our phones now tell you how much screen time you spend on social media. And you're like, what? It's so much. So I would say, hey, I'm going to give myself 30 minutes or an hour to, know what the latest, know if there's something essential that I need to know, and then, turn it off. I know with family members, sometimes it's difficult because a lot of people call their loved ones to vent, to share their anxiety, to share all their fears. And we don't want we don't want to that, but it's important for on both sides for you to um communicate where you are. Like, I can listen, like, definitely you have to be there and be compassionate with the people that you love, but also set like and let them know, hey, I'm really trying to focus on something positive. And a lot of times it's the response, instead of trying to solve how they feel, is at the end of that dialogue say, why don't we focus on doing positive affirmations? Why don't we talk about, something great, and maybe help both of you? So it's not perfect because sometimes you just need to listen. But it's also important for you to be in charge of what you can control, and then limit any kind of interactions or exposure you have to the news.
Awesome. And just a reminder to everyone, if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A box and I will read them as they come in. But the next one is, what's your advice on setting up an effective work from home mini office? And as an employer, how do you make sure that your employees feel productive at home when they're not going to the office every day?
Yeah, so the answer of this question is different because now we're in the midst of this pandemic, and we have to be even more compassionate about how people are dealing with it. So I have two of my employees who just can't handle it. So they're just stopped working. Like, emotionally, they have not found their anchor, and I had to just say, it's okay, like, take time until you feel better. We have a distributed team, so we work from home a lot anyway. But emotionally, they're just like, I can't focus on work right now while this is going on. And I had to understand that that wasn't about me. That wasn't about anything else. I had to understand that. So part of it is being more flexible, not requiring this rigid. If you have a rigid schedule in your office, being more flexible with that, because a lot of people now are dealing with new environments. They might have several people in their household working at the same time, all on some simultaneous Zoom. Their kids might want to jump in the call and play with them during the call. And it's really, I think it's important to let your whole staff know that you understand that they're doing the best that they can, and you understand and you just appreciate their contribution in the midst of all of this. So I believe that, acknowledging that it's difficult for everyone based on this, and just being flexible in terms of, um, you know keeping on type of work. It's really like trusting your team. So we use, Slack for asynchronous communication. I use the tool Loom for people to do their updates for their workday. They don't have to do it every day, but I love them to give a, visual representation. Like, for instance, the woman on my team who does marketing, she shows me the Google Ads analytics, some of the things that she's done. She just walks through her different work products when she feels like I need an update, and tells me what she's going to work on next, right? And I love that tool Loom because it allows you to annotate these videos and send it off, right? Um, and then for the people who need more check-ins, like, it's on me to check in more often, because I have people who don't like a lot of notifications and don't like to be like loud on Slack. Like, some people just want to be quiet and lurkers. So it's kind of harder to know what they're doing if they don't respond to messages. So I just check in like, hey, how's it going? Can I help you do anything? Is there anything you need from me? And they always respond. And so I think it's a mix of knowing, the personality type of everyone in your team, knowing where you are, and letting them all know that you're here for them, you appreciate them, and we're all in this together. And if they feel like, confidence and compassion from you, they're more likely to do more work and not just say forget you because you're being mean to me, right? So that's what I do.
And for those employees who, are fortunate enough to still be working, who have a lot of anxiety around
Mhm.
job security and even just being able to do their job from home, at what point as an employer do you kind of have to give some tough love and, kind of continue on the same path that you were on while a lot of the staff is feeling these feelings?
So I feel like that was two different questions. So the tough love in terms of reaching goals, is that, I think that was the end, right?
Yeah, so I mean, it's on the employer to be more flexible since, everyone's
Yeah.
feeling the anxiety of this, but people who like grocery store workers, for
Yeah.
example, are essential employees who still have to go into work and are feeling that anxiety. How do you help them?
Yeah, that's a hard one because I mean, I don't know what I would do in that situation, to be honest with you. Like, if this is what's required, I have a lot of friends who are essential employees though. So they range from people who are involved in the election process. There can't be any voter suppression. So all the people who are involved in elections have to go to work. People who are doctors have to go to work. People who are in grocery stores, to your point, have to go to work. I mean, I think all that any of them can do is try to like protect themselves. So, follow all the guidelines in terms of, using protective gear and, safety first. And then, at the end of the day, and a lot of us feel like we don't have enough control. It's kind of up to you. If you feel like something is not safe, you have to really make sure you're safe, because if you're not, around anymore, then you're not around anymore. And it's difficult. One of my mentors, he had a nanny and he lives in New York, and he said, oh, because of this virus, he decided, because she used to take public transportation, he said, I was going to pick her. I drove an hour to pick her up and drop her off every day and all this kind of stuff. And she still had to let him know that this was not a priority for her to be a nanny at his house. And she was just not going to do it anymore because that's not what she wanted to do. And he felt like he was doing everything to protect her, but she had the decision making in her life that she was just not going to do it. And that's what she decided to do. And so I know a lot of us feel like we don't have this luxury to make these kind of decisions if we're essential employees. But what we can do is make sure that we keep our immune system up as good as possible. Try not to stress, and kind of secure ourselves, and follow all the guidelines as best as possible. Um, you know, that's all I have on that. Um,
Great.
yeah,
Yeah, it was a hard question.
yeah.
And then kind of going back to the very first question we asked about, different tools that you can use for mindfulness, and you talked about all the YouTube videos. Is there anyone specifically you recommend that's really good at leading a daily affirmation session or different poses?
Um, there are so many. Like, my favorite two speakers right now are Louise Hay and Abraham Hicks, and both of them have like hundreds of videos on YouTube. But they're mostly about mindfulness, not necessarily yoga poses. In terms of yoga poses, there's no one specific. I kind of just put in a search what I'm looking for. So like chair yoga poses, right? So one of my team members has muscular dystrophy, so she takes chair yoga, and so we would look up like chair yoga techniques, and we'll just do whatever has the highest number of views. But I don't have any specifics on that because there's just so many, and I like different videos every day.
And what have you seen most effective for like an entire team to do these together? Is it via Zoom or is it individually and then sharing, their thoughts afterwards? What are the best things to do as a group? And then what kind of tools facilitate that best?
Yeah, so I kind of said this earlier, spoke to this a bit earlier. So what we as a team do is we have a Zoom meeting once a week where we kind of recap what our experience was. So everyone journals every day on my team. That's like part of our culture. That's why I showed a picture of our company journal. So everyone has their journal. No one has to share it with anyone else, but everyone has it. And then when we check in on Wednesdays, we talk about, was it hard to journal this week? Was it easy? You know, what did we learn about ourselves, and what can we as a team do to be more supportive of one another? And so we try to instill this open, communication. It definitely helps with whoever's in charge to be the vulnerable person first. And so we've been really good at doing that. But I know that that's not that won't necessarily work with every single company culture. That's my company culture. But if that's not your company culture, I would recommend just sharing these techniques with your employees and just saying, hey, here are some options. And there's so many different resources on the importance of journaling and the importance of gratitude practice, and maybe pointing them to, a YouTube video that discusses it.
Awesome. And I don't see any more questions. So I think we are good on that end. If Jeff, you want to wrap us up.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you. And thanks again, Roshawnna. Really appreciate your time and all your advice. I think it was super helpful, and there were some great resources you shared. I know I was even trying the breathing technique during the webinar, and definitely felt a positive impact. So really appreciate your time. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us this week for the webinar sessions. Just as one more quick reminder, all of these are being recorded and will be shared on our website, our Vimeo page, by the end of the weekend. So feel free to take a look there. And then again, if you have any questions for Roshawnna or our team, the Generator and Brandery team, we'd be happy to connect one-on-one, and would love to hear from you. So feel free to reach out via email. And thanks again. Hope everyone has a great weekend. Roshawnna, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.